I walked toward the front of the ceremony room in my white dress, my heart racing with joy. This was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life. The guests smiled at me from their seats. My fiancé Mark stood waiting, his eyes bright with emotion. Then I saw it. My sister Autumn sat in my chair at the signing table. Not beside it, in it. The chair with the small card that read bride in elegant script. I stopped walking. My smile froze on my face. "Mom," I whispered, turning to my mother Carol, who stood nearby arranging flowers. She didn't look at me. "It'll photograph better this way, Jade. Autumn has such good posture. You know how cameras work." The registrar, Ms. Bennett, looked up from her papers. Her eyes moved from me to Autumn, then to the empty space where I should have been sitting. "Excuse me," Ms. Bennett said quietly. "Where is the bride seated?" Everyone went silent. 50 pairs of eyes turned toward us. I stood frozen between my mother and my sister, feeling 12 years old again. Small, invisible, erased. Ms. Bennett's voice was calm but firm. "We cannot proceed until the bride is properly seated." Autumn shrugged like it was nothing. A few guests laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of joke. But I knew it wasn't. Ms. Bennett closed her registration book slowly. "Who authorized this seating change?" My mother stepped forward, her chin lifted. "I did. I'm the mother of the bride. Surely that's within my authority." A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. People shifted in their seats. Mark's parents exchanged worried glances. Ms. Bennett looked at me. "Miss Hayes, is this arrangement acceptable to you?" Every face turned toward me, waiting. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to smooth it over, be the understanding one, avoid the scene. That's what I always did. But something inside me cracked. "No," I said quietly. "It's not acceptable." Autumn's smile flickered. My mother's face went hard. Mark stepped closer to me, his hand finding mine. Ms. Bennett nodded once. "Then we'll pause here. Miss Hayes, could you join me in the side room, please?" She didn't wait for an answer. She simply gathered her papers and walked toward a door beside the altar. I followed her, feeling everyone's eyes burning into my back. The side room was small and quiet. Ms. Bennett gestured for me to sit. Mark followed me inside, his jaw tight with anger. "Are you all right?" Ms. Bennett asked gently. I nodded automatically, then stopped. "Actually, no. I'm not." "Do you feel pressured to proceed with this ceremony?" "Not by Mark," I said quickly. "Never by Mark." "By your family?" The question hung in the air. Mark squeezed my hand. "This isn't about a chair," I said slowly, the words coming from somewhere deep. "This is about control. This is about being erased on my own wedding day." Ms. Bennett wrote something in her notebook. "I'm making a note of this incident. It will be part of the official record." Something about those words steadied me. This moment wouldn't just disappear. It would exist in writing, acknowledged, real. "Take your time," Ms. Bennett said. "When you're ready, we can continue. But only when you're ready." Mark pulled me close. "We can postpone," he whispered. "We can do this another day." I shook my head. "No. I'm marrying you today. But I'm doing it my way." For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. Sitting in that quiet room, memories flooded back. Birthdays where Autumn got the bigger cake because she's more photogenic. Graduations where Mom made sure Autumn stood in the center of every photo. Holidays where I cooked and cleaned while Autumn posed for pictures. "Be understanding," Mom always said. "You're the strong one. Autumn needs the attention more." I learned to step aside. To make myself smaller. To disappear. At my high school graduation, Mom rearranged the family photo so Autumn, who was just visiting from college, stood where I should have been. "She photographs better," Mom explained, as if that made it acceptable. At my college acceptance celebration, Mom invited Autumn's friends instead of mine because they're more fun. When I got engaged, Mom spent the first 20 minutes talking about Autumn's boyfriend and when they might get engaged. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. Mark held me. You don't have to do this today. Yes, I do, I said. Because if I don't stand up now, I never will. Ms. Bennet waited patiently by the door. I stood up, straightened my dress, and looked at myself in the small mirror on the wall. What if I stopped being strong and started being honest? I walked back into the ceremony room with my head high. The guests whispered as I approached. Mark stood beside me, protective but letting me lead. I faced the crowd. We're delaying the ceremony for a few minutes. My mother rushed forward. Jade, you're making a scene. You'll embarrass the whole family. I looked at her calmly. You already did that, Mom. Gasps echoed through the room. Autumn's confident smile cracked. She shifted in my chair, looking uncertain for the first time. I've spent my entire life making myself smaller so Autumn could be bigger, I continued, my voice steady. I've let you rearrange me, erase me, replace me. But not today. Today is my wedding day, and I will not disappear. The room was completely silent. Mark's mother nodded slowly, respect in her eyes. My mother's face turned red. How dare you? I dare because I'm done, I said simply. I'm done being the understanding one while being treated like I don't matter. Autumn stood up from my chair, suddenly looking small and exposed. Ms. Bennet stepped forward. Shall we proceed properly now? My mother opened her mouth, closed it, then tried a different approach. Jade, sweetheart, Mom said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I'm sorry if you misunderstood. I was only trying to help. It was the kind of apology that wasn't really an apology at all. Family makes sacrifices, she continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. Brides need to be flexible. It's just one photo, one seat. Why are you being so dramatic? I felt the familiar pull, the guilt, the pressure to back down. But Ms. Bennet was watching. Mark was watching. And I was watching myself. This isn't about flexibility, I said quietly. This is about respect. My mother's eyes narrowed. Fine. Autumn will move. But you're overreacting, and everyone can see it. She turned to the guests, trying to make me look unreasonable. But people weren't nodding anymore. They were looking at her differently. Ms. Bennet made another note in her book. Mrs. Hayes, the bride's wishes are paramount in this ceremony. If there's any further disruption, I'll be forced to cancel and reschedule. Mom's mouth snapped shut. Autumn finally stood and moved away from the signing table. But her eyes promised that this wasn't over. I sat in my rightful chair. Ms. Bennet placed the registration book in front of me. Whenever you're ready, she said gently. The ceremony resumed. Mark and I exchanged vows, and his voice was strong and clear. When he looked at me, I saw nothing but love and respect. The words felt more meaningful now. We weren't just promising to love each other. We were promising to stand up for each other. When it came time to sign the register, I held the pen firmly. My signature was clear and steady. Then my mother leaned close and whispered, "Switch places with Autumn for just one photo. The signing photo. She'll look better in it." I froze, the pen still in my hand. Ms. Bennet was watching. She'd heard the whisper. "No," I said quietly but clearly. Ms. Bennet placed her hand over mine and guided the pen to the next line. "The bride signs here," she said, her voice carrying through the room. "In her designated seat." The power shifted. Just a fraction. But I felt it. My mother's smile dimmed. She stepped back, her face tight with barely contained anger. Mark signed next, then our witnesses. Ms. Bennet stamped the document officially. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Walker," she said, and genuine warmth filled her voice. We were married. On my terms. In my seat. The reception was beautiful. Mark's family had helped plan most of it, sensing that my family's involvement came with strings attached. During dinner, Autumn stood to give a toast. I felt my stomach tighten. "To my little sister Jade," she said, raising her glass with a bright smile. "Who doesn't mind sharing the spotlight? She's used to it by now." Some people laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. Autumn continued, "Growing up, Jade was always so accommodating. She let me borrow her clothes, her space, her moments. That's just who she is. The words were light, but they stung like acid. Mark squeezed my hand under the table. His jaw was clenched. I smiled politely and raised my glass, refusing to give Autumn the reaction she wanted. But that night, lying in our hotel room with Mark asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling. This pattern had to end. Not with anger or shouting. Not with cutting them off entirely. With boundaries. Clear, firm, unmovable boundaries. For the first time in my life, I was going to choose myself consistently, not just in one dramatic moment. And I was going to stop waiting for permission to matter. Over the next few months, I pulled back. Fewer phone calls. Shorter visits. Polite but distant responses to my mother's constant demands. Can you babysit Autumn's kids this weekend? You don't have plans, do you? Actually, I do. Can you help Autumn move? She needs someone with a truck. I'm not available. Can you lend Autumn money? She's struggling. No, I can't. Each no felt like lifting a weight off my chest. My mother complained to relatives. Marriage changed Jade. She's become selfish. But I'd started therapy. I kept a journal. I learned words like parentification and scapegoat and golden child syndrome. I learned that what I'd always called being strong was actually being exploited. And I asked myself a question I'd never dared ask before. What would my life look like if I chose myself? The answer was terrifying and exhilarating. Mark supported me completely. You're not being selfish, he'd say. You're being healthy. Slowly, I built a life that felt like mine. Not a life borrowed from Autumn's shadow. Not a life arranged around my mother's convenience. Mine. A community nonprofit offered me a position managing their outreach programs. The pay was modest, but the work was meaningful, helping families access resources, build support systems, establish boundaries in difficult relationships. When I told my mother, she sniffed dismissively. That's not a real job, Jade. Real jobs happen in offices with proper titles. Autumn agreed. Why waste your degree on charity work? But I accepted anyway. The work changed me. I met people fighting to escape controlling relationships. I saw what happened when boundaries weren't respected. I learned that setting limits wasn't selfish, it was survival. And I found my voice. I led workshops. I spoke at conferences. I helped vulnerable families learn to advocate for themselves. My supervisor noticed. You're a natural at this, Jade. You really understand what these families are going through. I smiled. I've had some personal experience. For the first time in my life, I felt competent. Valuable. Seen. Not as Autumn's accommodating sister. Not as Carol's dutiful daughter. As myself. The feeling was addictive. 6 months after my wedding, Autumn's boutique started failing. She'd opened it with money from our grandmother's inheritance, money that was supposed to be split between us, but that Mom convinced me to share with Autumn because she needs it more. Now the boutique was drowning in debt. My mother called me. Jade, we need to talk about helping Autumn. We met for coffee. Mom laid out the situation. She needs $20,000 to stay afloat. I thought you could lend her some of your savings. No, I said simply. Mom blinked. What? I'm not lending Autumn money. But she's your sister. Family helps family. Family also respects boundaries. Autumn received her full inheritance plus my half. That was her help. My mother's face hardened. So you're just going to let her fail? I'm going to let her figure it out herself, yes. That's cold, Jade. That's healthy, Mom. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her coffee. Fine. But don't expect us to forget this. She left without saying goodbye. 3 days later, Autumn sent me a long, angry text about selfishness and betrayal. I didn't respond. Mark hugged me that evening. I'm proud of you. I cried, but they were good tears. The whispers started spreading through the family. Jade's changed. Jade's cold now. Jade thinks she's too good for us. My aunt stopped inviting me to family gatherings. My uncle unfriended me on social media. Cousins I'd grown up with sent passive-aggressive messages. Autumn told everyone who would listen that I'd abandoned her in her time of need. My mother painted me as ungrateful after everything she'd sacrificed for me. The family narrative shifted. I became the villain in their story. And I let them. Because fighting back would mean engaging with their version of reality. Defending myself would mean accepting their premise that I owed them explanations. Instead, I kept living well. I focused on my work. I spent time with Mark and his supportive family. I built friendships with people who respected boundaries. I let the truth work slowly, quietly, without my interference. Some relatives eventually reached out privately. "Your mom's version didn't make sense," one cousin admitted. I started remembering things differently. I didn't gloat. I didn't explain. I just said, "Thank you for reaching out." Truth has a way of surfacing when you stop trying to force it. 8 months after my wedding, I received an unexpected phone call. "Mrs. Walker. This is Ms. Bennett from the registry office." My heart skipped. "Yes. I'm conducting a follow-up review on wedding ceremonies where irregularities were noted. Your ceremony was flagged in my records." I remembered her notes. The official documentation of what happened. "I want to ensure you're satisfied with how the situation was handled," she continued. "And to ask if you'd like your concerns formally noted in our system for future reference." "What would that do?" I asked. "It creates a record. If similar issues arise with the same parties in future ceremonies, we'd have documented history of concerning patterns." I thought about Autumn. About my mother. About their inability to respect boundaries even on my wedding day. "Yes," I said. "I'd like that noted. Accurately. Thank you, Mrs. Walker. This will be filed officially." After we hung up, I sat quietly in my office. That phone call felt like validation. Like someone in an official capacity had looked at what happened and said, "This matters. This counts." A seed was planted, though I didn't yet know what it would grow into. 2 weeks later, my mother called with big news. "Autumn and Kyle are doing a vow renewal ceremony. Isn't that wonderful?" Autumn had been married for 3 years. A vow renewal seemed sudden. "They're making it a big celebration," Mom continued, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm. "Bigger and better than your wedding. Autumn wants to do it right this time." The implication was clear. My wedding, the one where I'd stood up for myself, was somehow wrong. "Where's the ceremony?" I asked neutrally. "The same registry office you used." Autumn loved the space. "And Ms. Bennett will be officiating again." My stomach flipped. The same registrar. The same woman who'd documented everything. "Autumn's so excited," Mom gushed. "She's planning everything perfectly. No drama this time." The "this time" felt deliberate, like a knife between the ribs. "That's nice," I said non-committally. After we hung up, I told Mark. He raised an eyebrow. "The same registrar who saw everything." "The same one." "That's interesting timing." I nodded slowly. Something was circling. I could feel it. Karma has a sense of irony. I spent an evening writing a letter to my mother. Not angry or accusatory. Just honest. I listed specific behaviors, the constant comparisons, the public humiliation, the expectation that I should sacrifice for Autumn without question, the dismissal of my feelings and needs. I explained how it affected me, the anxiety, the sense of worthlessness, the belief that my value came from being convenient. Then I set boundaries clearly. No more comparisons between me and Autumn. No more making decisions about my life without my consent. No more expecting me to fund or facilitate Autumn's choices. No more public humiliation or dismissive comments about my career, my choices, or my worth. I ended with, "I love you, Mom. But I won't accept this treatment anymore. These boundaries aren't negotiable." I mailed it the next day. My mother never responded. Not a call. Not a text. Not a letter. Just silence. The silence was heavier than any shouting match would have been. It confirmed what I'd always suspected. My value to her was conditional on my compliance. Mark found me crying one evening. "I did the right thing," I said. "So why does it hurt?" "Because you loved her first," he answered. "And she chose control over connection." My non-profit hosted a fundraising gala. I'd spent months organizing it, and it was my biggest professional project yet. The evening was elegant: candles, string music, heartfelt speeches from families we'd helped. Guests praised our programs. Donors opened their checkbooks. My mother attended. I'd invited her out of obligation, expecting her to decline. But she came. She sat in the back, watching as I gave the welcome speech. Watching as community leaders praised my work. Watching as people approached me with respect and admiration. She saw competence where she'd always expected chaos. At the end of the night, she approached me briefly. "It was nice," she said, the words clearly difficult. "Thank you for coming," I replied politely. She looked like she wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. Finally, she just nodded and left. Mark slipped his arm around my waist. She looked confused. "She's not used to seeing me as capable," I said. "She spent so long believing I need to be managed." "But you never did." "No," I agreed. "I never did." For the first time, my mother looked uncertain. The ground beneath her assumptions had shifted. And I hadn't had to argue or prove anything. I'd just lived my truth. The invitation to Autumn's vow renewal arrived in the mail. It was elaborate, embossed, expensive. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "Jade, I'd love for you to stand beside me during photos. Like a backup bridesmaid. It would mean so much." Backup. The word choice was deliberate. Not maid of honor. Not even bridesmaid. Backup. I called Autumn. "Thank you for the invitation. I'll attend as a guest, but I won't be standing in the wedding party." "Why not?" Her voice was sharp. "I'm your sister. And I support you as your sister." From the guest seats. "You're being petty about your own wedding. You need to get over it." "I'm not being petty. I'm setting boundaries." "You think you're better than me now, don't you?" Autumn's voice rose. "With your charity job and your boundaries and your perfect marriage." "No, Autumn," I interrupted calmly. "I don't think I'm better than you. I just think I'm equal to you. And I'm not going to be treated as less." She hung up on me. 2 days later, Mom called. "Can't you just do this one thing for Autumn? Be the bigger person." "I've been the bigger person my entire life," I said. "Now I'm just being an appropriately sized person." The day before the vow renewal ceremony, Autumn and my mother attended the rehearsal at the registry office. I wasn't there, but Ms. Bennett was. According to what I learned later, Ms. Bennett pulled up the file from my wedding the moment she saw Autumn and my mother walk in. She reviewed the notes. The documentation of pressure and manipulation. The formal record I'd requested be filed. When Autumn started trying to rearrange the seating, wanting to place herself in a special chair for better photos, Ms. Bennett's eyes narrowed. The same dynamic. The same behavior. The same disregard for appropriate boundaries. My mother encouraged it. Just like before. "It's just for photos. It looks better this way." Ms. Bennett made extensive notes in her file. She watched Autumn direct her husband Kyle like a prop. She watched my mother orchestrate everything to maximize Autumn's prominence. And she remembered me, standing in my wedding dress, being erased by the people who should have celebrated me. Ms. Bennett made a decision. This pattern needed to stop. Not just for me. For anyone else these two might hurt. The ceremony day arrived. I attended as a regular guest, sitting in the back with Mark. The room was decorated beautifully. Autumn looked stunning. Kyle looked nervous but happy. Then the ceremony began. Autumn immediately walked to the signing table and sat in the featured position, the one meant for the officiant's direct view. She positioned Kyle to her side, slightly behind her. My mother beamed, arranging flowers to frame Autumn perfectly. Ms. Bennett walked to the front. She opened her book, looked at the seating, and then, "We stop here." The room went silent. The same words from my wedding. The same firm, calm tone. Autumn laughed nervously. What? Why? Seating protocol, Ms. Bennet said. Please take your assigned positions. My mother stepped forward. We arranged it this way for photos. Is there a problem? Ms. Bennet's gaze was steady. Yes, Mrs. Hayes. There is. The room felt charged. I could see confusion rippling through the guests. This is a legal ceremony, Ms. Bennet continued. Not a photo session. Proper protocol must be followed. Autumn looked genuinely shocked that someone was challenging her. Ms. Bennet set down her book. I'm pausing this ceremony for a formal review. Review of what? My mother demanded. Of concerning patterns related to this family's ceremonies. You could hear a pin drop. Kyle looked bewildered. What's going on? Ms. Bennet pulled out a file. I have documented incidents showing repeated attempts to manipulate ceremony protocols for personal preference, with disregard for proper procedures and others' comfort. My mother's face went pale. You can't do this. I can and must. Multiple incidents of coercive behavior during official ceremonies require review before I can proceed. Ms. Bennet looked at Autumn. Miss Hayes. It's Mrs. Crawford now, Autumn snapped. Mrs. Crawford. I have formal complaints from your sister's wedding showing inappropriate pressure and manipulation during what should have been her ceremony. The room exploded in whispers. Autumn turned and spotted me in the back. Her eyes filled with fury. This is Jade's fault, she said. She complained because she was jealous. Ms. Bennet shook her head. The complaints were legitimate. And I'm seeing the same behavior today. That's why I'm stopping this ceremony pending proper review. My mother's voice shook. This is a misunderstanding. But people were looking at her differently now. Seeing her clearly for the first time. Ms. Bennet addressed the guests calmly. I apologize for this disruption. However, my role includes ensuring ceremonies are conducted ethically and without coercion. She turned to Autumn and my mother. At Mrs. Walker's wedding, formerly Miss Hayes, there were serious concerns about family pressure and inappropriate seating manipulation. That was different, Mom protested weakly. How? Ms. Bennet asked. You took your daughter's seat on her wedding day. You pressured her to accommodate your other daughter's desire for prominence. You dismissed her discomfort publicly. Every word landed like a hammer. Ms. Bennet continued. I documented everything officially. Mrs. Walker requested that documentation be formalized in case patterns emerged. She looked at Autumn. Today, I've watched you rearrange seating for your preference, redirect attention away from your husband, and prioritize appearance over authenticity. The same patterns your mother demonstrated at your sister's wedding. Autumn's face crumpled. Kyle touched her arm, confused and concerned. None of this was Jade's doing, Ms. Bennet said firmly. She simply asked that the truth be recorded. The truth has now revealed itself. My mother grabbed her purse. We don't have to stay here and be humiliated. Mrs. Hayes, if you leave now, I'll have to note that in my report as well. She froze. Ms. Bennet gestured for Autumn to join her in the side room, the same room where I'd gone during my wedding. After a moment, Autumn followed, Kyle close behind her. My mother tried to follow too, but Ms. Bennet held up a hand. Just Mrs. Crawford, please. The door closed. The guests sat in stunned silence. Mark squeezed my hand. You okay? I nodded slowly. I felt strange. Not happy. Not vindictive. Just validated. After 20 minutes, the door opened. Autumn's eyes were red. Kyle looked shell-shocked. Ms. Bennet spoke gently but firmly to the guests. After discussion, we've agreed that counseling is needed before this ceremony can proceed ethically. Counseling? Someone whispered. Mrs. Crawford has acknowledged some concerning dynamics that need to be addressed. I cannot in good conscience facilitate a renewal ceremony that centers public performance over authentic partnership. Kyle was nodding. He understood. Autumn looked devastated, but for the first time, genuinely reflective. The ceremony is postponed, Ms. Bennet concluded. When Mrs. Crawford is ready to proceed with appropriate focus and healthy dynamics, we can reschedule. She closed her book with finality. My mother stood frozen, her perfect plan disintegrating around her. And I sat quietly in the back, bearing witness to a truth that had finally broken through. Later that evening, my mother appeared at my door. I wasn't expecting her. Mark answered and let her in cautiously. She stood in our living room looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "I need you to fix this," she said. Not demanded. Asked. "Fix what, Mom?" "Talk to the registrar. Tell her Autumn's not like that. Tell her it was all a misunderstanding." I sat down calmly. "I can't do that." "Can't or won't?" "Both. Because it wasn't a misunderstanding. Everything Ms. Bennet said was true." My mother's face twisted. "So you're just going to let your sister be humiliated?" "I didn't humiliate Autumn. Her behavior did. Just like my behavior, finally standing up for myself, isn't what hurt our relationship. Your refusal to respect me did. I'm your mother. And I'm your daughter. Both of us. Autumn and me. But you only ever saw her." Tears formed in Mom's eyes. Real ones, I thought. I didn't mean. "Yes, you did," I said gently. "You meant every choice you made. You chose to prioritize Autumn over me, again and again. You chose appearance over authenticity. You chose control over connection. What do you want from me?" "Nothing anymore," I said. "I'm not fixing this. I'm not lying. I'm not erasing myself again. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with accountability." She stood there for a long moment, then left without another word. Mark held me while I cried, not from sadness, but from the sheer exhaustion of finally telling the complete truth. 3 weeks later, Autumn called me. "I started therapy," she said quietly. "Mom and I both did. Together." "That's good," I replied carefully. The therapist asked me to think about what it was like growing up as the favorite. I never thought about it that way before. I waited. I got so used to being the center that I didn't know how to not be. And I was jealous of you, Jade. Jealous? Of what? You're steady, competent. People respect you naturally. I kept trying to take the spotlight because I thought if I wasn't performing, no one would care about me. Her voice broke. "I'm sorry. For your wedding. For everything." "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." "Will you? Can we try again?" Slowly. I thought about it. Maybe. With boundaries. And with therapy continuing. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." My mother joined family counseling too. The sessions were raw and uncomfortable. Decades of dysfunction had to be unpacked carefully. Mom struggled to admit her role. But slowly, painfully, she stopped rewriting history. "I made you invisible," she finally said in one session, tears streaming. "I told myself I was helping you be strong, but I was just making myself comfortable." It wasn't a complete transformation. But it was accountability. And that hurt them more than revenge ever could, because it was fair and true, and they couldn't argue with it. For months later, Autumn and Kyle rescheduled their vow renewal. It was small this time. Intimate. Focused on their actual relationship rather than appearances. I attended. So did our mother. This time, Autumn sat in the proper seat. She looked at Kyle with genuine emotion instead of performing for cameras. My mother stayed quiet and supportive without orchestrating anything. Ms. Bennet officiated with a small, knowing smile. Before the ceremony started, Autumn found me. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not letting me keep being that person. For showing me what boundaries look like." She hugged me, awkwardly, but sincerely. When my mother spoke to me afterward, she said, "I'm working on it, Jade. I know I have a long way to go." "I know," I said. "But you're trying. That matters." The registrar caught my eye as we left. She didn't say anything, just nodded once. Later, Mark and I walked to our car. The evening air was cool and clear. "How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it. At peace. Not because they apologized, though that helped, but because I know my worth now. And it's not up for negotiation anymore. He kissed my forehead. "I love you, Jade Walker." "I love you too." As we drove home, I realized something. Justice delivered through dignity feels different than justice delivered through revenge. It's quieter, slower, more solid. It doesn't give you the satisfaction of watching someone fall. It gives you something better, the certainty that you stood firm, told the truth, and refused to be erased. And in the end, that's the victory that lasts. My worth was never dependent on my family's recognition. But watching them finally see it, watching them choose accountability over comfort, felt like closing a door that had been left open my entire life. I was whole. I was free. And I was exactly who I was always meant to be.